I'm going to be starting with the treatment of behavioral disorders with Chinese medicine. And this is an extremely important topic within veterinary medicine. And the reason why it is so important is because most animals that are sent to animal shelters and or are euthanized, it's typically due to some type of a behavioral problem. So when you think about that for just a moment, you realize how very important it is that we try to find some way to prevent many of these animals from being euthanized, in many cases just because they're expressing normal canine or feline behaviors, but they're not being handled appropriately. So we do need behavioral modification. I want to mention that. We do need behavioral modification on a lot of these animals, but also some of these animals are having physical problems, okay, because we are going to look at the many causes as to why behavioral problems are so prevalent, and then we're going to be looking at what types of herbal therapies we can use. Sometimes we can also use acupuncture for this as well. You typically will almost always have to use some type of herbal therapy. Using acupuncture alone is not going to be adequate for many of these cases. You're going to have to use an actual medicinal, just as you use conventional drugs like Anapril and Valium and some of the other Prozac and some of the other types of psychiatric drugs in humans. You're going to also use those in animals for sure. So when you think about that, it makes sense that herbal medicine would be essential to try to treat a lot of these cases. So the reason why behavioral problems are so prevalent is because, well, many times we're breeding animals that have inheritable and undesirable behavior traits. So for example, what I mean by this is that I'm going to use one of the biggest examples out there is pit bulls. Many of you have probably heard in the news how pit bulls in particular as a breed they're actually being barred from certain towns or countries or counties. A lot of times with the pit bulls, they are required to be muzzled in specific areas, okay, certain cities. Because why? Because pit bulls were bred to fight other dogs. And unfortunately, this behavior, again, is inheritable. I mean, they're trained to fight other dogs. They're used for different types of, it's almost the same as what you see with greyhounds, or you'll see it with greyhounds. Greyhounds meaning they're being used to earn money for specific groups. I guess that's the best way to say it, is that there's going to be these rings of animals that are being used to fight. Similar to what you see with cockfighting, they do the same thing with pit bulls. And these dogs are not the type of dogs that make the best pets, but they're being bred, they're being kept by different individuals who don't really care much about the animal itself, but they're using it to make money. So that would be a good example of breeding a dog with an inheritable trait that's really undesirable. And then, of course, what happens is that many of these dogs don't just react to other dogs, they react with aggression to humans. And there's been many different instances where pit bulls have actually killed humans, children. Now, also we see behavioral problems that are present and prevalent because of a lack of socialization in the first 3 to 4 months of life. Many of these animals are isolated, many of the dogs are isolated, and this is not normal for dogs to be isolated. They're pack members, they want to be with other dogs, and when they're isolated, they end up having all types of problems relating to other of their species, other dogs, and they also have problems with fear because of being isolated, on having different inappropriate behaviors. A lot of fear biting can come from being isolated early on in life, and they don't make very good pets after this point. And so it's really crucial that they have early socialization in the first few months of life in order to make them a good pet and to make them to have normal behavior around humans and other dogs.